guys, what is up? Alex Scott here with Consordini.com. Thank you so much for checking out another one of our videos. Today, I am going to talk about something that I get asked about a lot, especially by clients and other producers or engineers who come into my studio. As you can see, I'm in my tracking room, sitting next to one of my prized possessions, my Hammond L112 organ. It was made in 1966, all tube powered. I have a Leslie speaker for it off in an ISO room that stays permanently mic'd up. I absolutely love this thing. You can also maybe see behind me in frame, I have an upright bass back there. But a lot of people come into my studio and they look around and they see that I have the Hammond. I've got an upright piano. I have a vintage Fender Rhodes. A couple different drum kits and a bunch of snare drums and all this kind of stuff. And they ask me, they look around, they go, why do you have all this stuff? Don't you know there's software instruments, there's VST plugins, there's virtual instruments, blah, 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 that you can just load up as a plugin and do it all with MIDI and there's the Yamaha motifs or Nord stage pianos or whatever that can do all these keyboard sounds and they're really convincing. And I don't know why you would spend all this money and have this huge thing that you have to get serviced and maintained and blah, blah, blah. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to people. So I wanted to do a quick video just talking about that and talking about why I've invested a lot of money and time into having and maintaining real instruments in 2019. Virtual technology is amazing. The stuff you can do with digital now is super, super cool. There's a lot of companies that make really, really high quality plugins that do sound like an incredibly authentic Hammond organ or incredibly authentic Rhodes and Whirlies and all shapes and sizes of pianos and anything else for that matter, stringed instruments and all this kind of stuff. First of all, everything is a tool and every tool has its use. If you are somebody who's working out of a small space, you don't have room for something like this. This thing is massive. It weighs almost 400 pounds. That's one excellent reason that you would want to go with software instruments as opposed to something real. Obviously, budget is another big consideration for a lot of us. The sound is the first thing that comes to mind when I think about why I love having real instruments like this. I still, to this day, and I've used everything out there, all the Native Instruments stuff, all the East-West stuff, and beyond and beyond and beyond. There's some that are really, really good. For example, if you're a Logic user, the built-in B3 organ in Logic sounds great. But does it sound like a real B3 that's running through an actual Leslie? It just doesn't. There are subtleties that, try as though they might, these software instruments just can't emulate. Little things, the inconsistencies. On this organ, I don't have it on right now, but as you push the key down, you can hear each of the drawbars sort of activate as the key goes through its travel. And that just gives it a particular texture where every single note that you play is just a tiny little bit different. The Leslie speaker that's hooked up to, you can hear the brakes working, you can hear it speeding up and slowing down. And a lot of people would say, oh, well, that's noise. You don't necessarily want that in your recording if you want a really clean recording. I love that kind of stuff because it's real. You hear these inconsistencies. You hear maybe a little bit of mechanical hum or noise or something. That to me is character. That to me gives a recording a level of authenticity that you just can't get with any kind of software instruments. And they're, especially the more advanced ones, they now have options to try to introduce those imperfections back into the sound. And you can control, like on the Native Instruments, like the Gentleman upright, you can control the volume of the hammers and how much mechanical noise the pedals make and all this kind of stuff. And that's cool. I appreciate that they're trying to do that. And to most people out there listening blind, they probably wouldn't be able to hear the difference. But, to me, it's still just the sound that I can get out of this is way more authentic. And the control that I have over the sound, I can move the Leslie cabinet around. I can put it in different rooms. I can move the mics around it. I can mic it up with different mics in different positions with XYs or, different stereo pairs or mono or anything like that. Again, I know you can do this in some of the virtual spaces too, but for me, the authenticity of the sound and the hands-on versatility of how I set it up is huge. So those are the first kind of, two big things that speak to me when it comes to owning real instruments. The other thing, and this is especially true with keyboard instruments. I have the Hammond, again, I have a Rhodes just out of frame, I have an upright piano. I track a lot of bands. I have a lot of bands who come into my studio to work, and Every single keyboard player who walks into my tracking room, immediately their face lights up with a big smile because they see I've got a real Hammond. I've got a real Rhodes. I'm not handing them some plastic MIDI controller and saying, oh no, trust me, I swear it sounds just as good. They know this. They know how to use it. They know how to operate it. I don't have to explain anything to them. They know what the drawbars do. They know what the pedals do. They know what all the switches do. It's a Hammond organ. And nothing brings joy to a keyboard player like giving them a real instrument to play. When they see the Rhodes and they sit down at the Rhodes, they get that hammer action feel and the wood keys, and it's authentic, it's real, it brings vibe to the whole experience. Now, it can even be almost limiting in certain situations because in a lot of these plug-in instruments, you have an almost unrealistic amount of control over how the instrument can sound. You can temper the tunings in different ways, and you can use, oh, well, it's got every Rhodes ever made, the Mark II, the Mark III, the Suitcase, the blah, blah, blah. I can run it through any amp in the world. But again, I would give up that level of flexibility, and I do give up that level of flexibility in return for the authentic experience, the authentic sound. No piece of software that I've ever heard can really accurately emulate how a real Rhodes sounds. They can get close, and there's lots of ones that use full-on sample libraries of all the different keys being played at different velocities and all this kind of stuff. That's all very, very cool, but it's still software. It's still not a real instrument being played by a real human being. And one of my favorite arguments to have with people is, oh, well, why don't you just use a plug-in Rhodes or something? Well, you're a guitar player. Why wouldn't I just use a virtual software plug-in acoustic guitar? Just replace all your parts with that. And they go, oh, God, that'd sound terrible. Yeah, it would. Now, obviously, software versions of guitars, for instance, are different than keyboards. It's harder to emulate a guitar because there's so much finger mechanic involved in it. But for me, the same mindset still applies. And yeah, just the subtle variances, the subtle inconsistencies, and the authenticity of the experience. Just having this instrument in front of you, you know that you're playing a real organ. If you're on a keyboard like a Nord, for instance, and you're just swapping through presets, and ultimately the instrument doesn't change the whole time, even if it sounds super convincing, from a player's perspective, you're still just playing a Nord. It's not real. It's all synthesized or digital or whatever. And for a lot of players, I'll put them back to back on a real Hammond, and then on a software instrument, maybe we'll be experimenting and wanting to try a few different sounds. Their takes are always better on the real Hammond. Even though it might be a little bit more difficult to play. The key, again, it's from 1966. It's got, some of the keys are kind of clicky and weird. Some of the switches are a little bit fuzzy, and you got to wiggle them a little bit and stuff like that. But regardless of all of that, just the physical experience of interacting with a real instrument, hearing the tone wheel spin up and smelling the cool 50s electronic smell that comes out of it when it gets all nice and warmed up, that has this subtle psychological effect of inspiring a better performance, inspiring a more authentic performance. So, kind of in summary, I know for a lot of you guys out there watching this, you don't have the option of having something like that, and that's okay. I'm not trying to dog on software instruments and say, oh, they suck and you can't get a great sounding record with them, and you have to have a real Hammond or else just don't even bother. Not at all. The software is amazing, and it's super flexible. Again, especially if you're working in a bedroom or a smaller studio space of any kind where you don't have room for this kind of stuff. If your budget doesn't allow for this kind of stuff. Or if you're like traveling a lot or so, you're working on a laptop or something like that, obviously we can't, load a Hammond into our car and go everywhere if we're collaborating or working in another studio, whatever. So there's lots and lots of instances where the plugin stuff is just as good. But if you are somebody who's looking really seriously at being a recording engineer and having a real studio, you plan on bringing bands in, you plan on doing full records, you plan on musicians of any kind coming in to work in your space. And this is, again, just especially true for the keyboard instruments for me, the Rhodes, the organ, the piano, this kind of stuff. They're really, to me, if you want to get serious about it, there is no substitute for having the real instruments. It's going to teach you a lot more about recording. It's going to inspire the players that come into your space. It's great for photo shoots. It's great for social media. I love posting shots of the organ, or somebody going to town and rocking the drop bars and doing the whole thing, or going to town on the roads. And it's just it really is, there's a reason that this stuff is still in demand. There's a reason this stuff still costs good money, because there isn't anything that, in my opinion, that can ever truly replace some of these old, authentic, vintage instruments. But that is all just my opinion. I would love to hear what you guys think. I know the whole analog versus digital debate has been going on since digital was a thing. There are guys who swear by plugins and say that nobody can tell the difference and everybody's listening on their iPhones anyway, so who cares? And then there's guys who go way further than I do and only record to tape and swear by it and say digital's ruined modern music and all this kind of stuff. I fall somewhere in the middle. I think plugins have their place. I think real instruments have their place. Same with real rack gear, all that kind of stuff. But I would love to hear what you guys think, what your experiences are, what you guys own or don't own or want to own in terms of real instruments. Please let me know any thoughts that you guys have in the comments down below. Again, my name is Alex Scott with Consordini.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, leave us a comment, all that good YouTube-y stuff. Click that notification bell to get notified whenever we post a new video. All of that is much appreciated. And yeah, we will see you in the next video.